So there's more code on screen. Pause if you need to look at it. Otherwise, I will explain it, but let's just switch this off so I can actually get started with the run. So, I did notice something that when I was formatting my text, the way that I am using to auto-format the text back into code that actually works, because we've separated it like I showed you at the very beginning, it doesn't work, so you have to reformat it, but I only do that, I only spread it out vertically so that it's easier to read, I guess is the best way to say it. By the way, Herald, right? But I'll explain more in a moment. I think we have 3 custom mysteries. No, yeah, we'll set random item stats. Why not? Because we're using the same exact weapon. So, as we get into Herald World of War Random Item Stats 3 Custom Mysteries, the code at the very beginning of the video basically makes it so that I can use the item like so. I also put this inspect differently, that way I can remind myself that things are working, but I can basically make it so that the item can be set to crit and not set to crit. There's not really a reason to do that, it's just more a show of concept, I guess. Basically to show that, you know, if you wanted to set 2 different modes for something, here's one way to do it. It's a really unrefined way, but it works perfectly fine. Second encounter, strength, dexterity, second mystery, Toxicon, and maybe a light check. Every single non-stat check. And then my favorite 2 checks, strength and dexterity. But there are other ways to do it, and one example of another way is basically making a whole different status effect through an ito file that basically handles things based on what you want to switch on and off. When I say things, say for example, I want a katana equipped, a certain item equipped. Maybe it's a B item, maybe it's slot C item. You could call it by name. You can add it. You can try to look for tags, but essentially, again, you can throw things to a file and have that basically manage things for you. But the way that I have it, all of this is part of this odd katana.ito file, so that will perfect, like as the quote says, this'll do. So, sailors, household hell, orphan, handkerchief, and teen. I don't remember anything at all, so I'm just gonna do the 3 custom mysteries first. But yeah, there are a whole host of things that you can do if you want to manage things through PERM. Nice 10 roll, by the way, game. And if you decide to use PERM, there is a whole host of things you can do. Now, whether or not you'll be able to do them bug-free on your first try, probably not. I really do suggest that you test everything, even as you go, but definitely at least once per whatever you want to test. Whether you add a variable that gets added, and then at this point you might ask, well, Jordan, how do I test a variable if all I did was set it, because there's no way for me to do it? That's why I talked about no way for me to check if I don't do anything else. That's why I say throw in like message log files that basically tell you when something is happening. If I can get into an encounter, or I can even show you here, even this little quote here, the way of the blade, or maybe calm it down a bit, those are 2 message log pieces of code that essentially spit out a message, and on its own it does nothing else. But if nothing else, but when paired with something that I've changed in this example, or in the example that I showed you at the beginning of the video, I flip a variable, and that variable is now checked whenever I do a strong attack with the odd katana, or before I even do a strong attack. But it basically runs a check, and it's not so costly because, I mean, all it's checking is 1 or 2 lines of code at the moment, and then performing all of the other checks that are, hey, did you do a strong attack and did it successfully hit the enemy? Then go through looking for a crit. If not, then don't do anything because the game hasn't crit. But at the same time, that's also why, I think if I can show you here, and one thing I could have done was just remove the window here so that you can see the effect, but I decided not to do it for the moment. So, yeah, I'm just going to pick something and move on with life. Oh no, 10 experience, but hey, -2 doom. Hey, time skip, stop! And then bath. Okay, never mind, it was quite worse. But by that same concept of what I was talking about earlier, in terms of using message log, when you're finished making something and you know it works, you don't want to use as many message logs, because again, I personally try not to flood too many messages, but at the same time, I also like throwing messages. That way you are knowing for sure that an effect is happening in your face. A common example I like to use is that I show you how much bonus damage you're getting from, in this case, the odd katana. I've used similar things in the past for other custom content, but if you don't add something like that, it can be easy to lose track. It is kind of a human error thing to do, but if I were to show you here, and I should have switched this off, so if I switch it off, you'll see that I don't roll for counterattacks at all. But when I turn it back on, how do I know that I'm looking for a counterattack if I haven't thrown message logs? I mean, there's no way to check, although I did hit a crit here with the 99 roll. But you get the point. Now it's looking for crits, and we rolled a crit successfully. Can't tell that's how much damage we did, because 20 damage is more than a lot of enemies. Like, just most enemies. But, again, that's why throwing messages, at least, and printing them out is helpful. One thing that I wanted to note, if I didn't already talk about before, if not recently, is that, again, yeah, when I'm formatting my code, it all comes out vertically, because that's one way that I can get things to show, and that way it looks better for me to look at. Nice dolls, by the way. But when I reformat them, the way that I'm doing it at the moment makes it so that spaces sometimes do not appear in between things. And a common example is colons and the numbers, and the reason it looks that way is because I specifically call a variable. That's why this number changes all the time, and when I reformat it back, nice one roll, by the way, only I could do that. But anyway, when you reformat it back in a way that the eto file can read, then it removes those spaces. That's all I'm trying to say at the moment. That's something easily fixable, because I could even just do a regular expression search and then replace based on that. But it is something that it's an observation that I made, basically. Again, this is not some kind of criticism or persuasion. It's literally just an observation, because I'm like, oh, why are spaces not appearing there? Because it literally, adding spaces here doesn't change how the gameplay functions. It just changes how aesthetically things look to my eyeballs, which is not the greatest. Nice 12 dexterity roll, by the way, game. But anywho, moving on. Looting, blah, and then blah. So yeah, let's just do strength. I'm lazy at the moment, don't want to think. And we'll leave this katana on crit. Again, just want to display another little thing you can do, even if you just want to switch something on and off. Now, there are more sophisticated ways to implement something like a stance system, or like having something check whether or not you have something on or off, but this will do perfectly fine, as long as it's not taking even bare maximum up to like thousands of lines of code, like literally thousands, not just 8,000. If you could, probably just 1,000 lines of code will still run relatively fine for World of Horror. How do I know that? Because I'm using over 100 pieces of custom content, probably 200 at this point, that each have at least like 10 to 100 lines of code in them. So yeah. And to even take another step back, those who have some experience with programming already know this, but for those who don't, I want to kind of explain, because it kind of gives you the scope of what can be handled by most computers, and I'm not even using the most powerful setups. You usually have to run through about a few 10,000 instances worth of something, whether it's addition, whether it is executing something, it could be anything. Whether you're adding, subtracting, saying something, having the game throw you a message, you have to do like a few 10,000s worth of whatever, anything really, before you experience any kind of slowdown. And that slowdown may be no longer than like a second or 3, depending. So again, feel free to go crazy, but at the same time, you do still want to be efficient with your coding. Something that I was very interested in, at the very least, theoretically, ow, I hit my finger on something, it wasn't called efficiency. Here I am saying that it was one of my favorite things to do, but basically the time efficiency of tasks in general, usually that's a very theoretical thing to go through when you are developing games in particular. However, it actually happens more often than you think. But the reason why it's not something you usually consider is because, and by time efficiency, just to save for 15 seconds, basically making anything, but in this case, game development or custom content or mods, work in such a way that the player doesn't notice that anything's happened. And how do you know they'll notice? Nice crit, by the way. How do you know that a player notices something? When they have to sit at a loading screen. That's the simplest way I can explain it. So, to move on to what I really wanted to talk about, the time efficiency of things is something that you do want to be aware of, but normally it's not something you need to worry about, because of even the setups I use aren't the weakest either, so I won't run into slowdown. However, you do still want to be conscious of it, because it's literally not going to hurt anyone but maybe yourself, unless you take really bad documentation or you don't keep track of things well, to basically make whatever you're working on more time efficient. And so what do I mean by this, for those who don't know, again, programming? So what I mean by this is there are certain things you can do. Basically, there are strategies you can use when coding or programming things, games, in this case, code, even custom content, and you can make them basically very, very not time efficient. I haven't tried it yet with World of War, but you can do it with World of War. World of War, I could probably, like, try to add add 1 to a certain variable, so have something count up to 1,000,000, and it might slow down World of Horror. This is a very, very, extreme example, but it can happen if you like just your mind slips and maybe you make 30 pieces of custom content, items, characters, or otherwise, and they all run like thousands of lines of code, and for some reason they all have to function at a very specific moment. Maybe when the player investigates a location, maybe when they use an item, and then so suddenly the game slows down by a whole lot. You'll most likely see this when you actually start World of Horror with custom content, whether it's PERM or otherwise, because I've had it happen to my face more than a few times. Also, nice 12 roll, by the way, game. I'm gonna tree for stamina. But yeah, if you're making custom content, I'd say like 1 out of 1,000 custom content people who make custom content in World of War will run into this. Even that. Also, sadness. Why am I so slow? Oh my goodness. Pain. That's why I'm so slow. Well, why am I so... Oh, drenched. I was like, what am I suffering from? Well, anyway, I think we can just do this. I did want to throw away items for the sailors, but I guess we just live with what we've got because we still have 2 items we can throw away. So, as we just bumbled through this whole video, I didn't even... Wow, this was a lot... Oh, I accidentally fought this boss. Well, hey. I guess we do have to hope for a thing. I didn't skip the boss because I didn't throw the torch. But if we hit both of these, maybe it's fine? Yeah, I think we're actually okay here. So, this doesn't get me a crit, by the way, but it does get me out. Now, I'm hurt, but I should still get out. But yeah, basically, there's a lot you would have to do. You would purposely be trying to slow the game down. And that's usually not going to be fun for the player. It's very, very hard to have the game slow down and have a player not be annoyed by it, is another way to say that. But anywho, I really went on a big off tangent. That's not even what I wanted to talk about. Hey, adrenaline. But, so we have dexterity as well, so we might as well take dexterity. So now we have enough for every single stamina check. We need at least 4 reason, though. So we'll rest twice and then move on. We should survive no matter what. And we also did have mayhem, but good to be safe. I don't remember at all. I'm just going to stay the goblin and move on with life. Why did I talk about all that? I think it was because I was going over just the time efficiency of code and how interesting that is. Again, it's not something you would normally need to worry about. But it is something you should be aware of, whether you're a programmer or not, because time efficiency is a thing in real life too. What did I do for my second mystery? I know it was, I think it was like a second, it was a second mystery, but, or I didn't, I'm losing my words. Anyway, can we one-shot talk shit on here? No, I just realized I may have made a bit of a mistake. Well, hey, I think I can brace here and throw out an attack. I actually can. Can I do anything more? I'm gonna gamble. Let's gamble. Alright. We need to literally hit one more. Okay, good. I think I might die here, actually, because we're gonna hit 100 Doom on this last floor. So, without further ado, I mean, hey, autopiloting. But yeah, without further ado, not really much else to say. That was all I could say in the time span I have, and it's not really much I would do because I'd just be filling time. But yeah, without further ado, look, here's the sigil for the light check. I guess I'll see you later. I have fought the boss and died!